Back with Dr. Johnathon Ross, we're talking about Medicare for All, and we know it's going to be a huge issue. It already is an issue in the society. It's going to be a huge political issue as we head toward 2020. We've covered the fact that Medicare for All, everybody has access to health care, doctor of their choice, right?
Yeah.
That most Americans would actually pay less for health care than they do now. Health insurance companies, the doctor, must detest you and even this notion.
Yeah, I mean, if it came down to it, Jerry, I'd pay them to go away. I mean,
Which in essence we'd be doing.
I really would. I mean, I think here's the deal. If you look at all the profiteering in healthcare right now, it's actually a relatively small percentage of what we're spending. It's the complexity of 1,000 different insurers with 1,000 different sets of rules, 1,000 different networks, 1,000 different sets of contracts with doctors, hospitals, labs, all the rest of it. It's the complexity that's killing us. And so simple is what a single payer like a Medicare for All can do. And it's the simplicity of administrating it that leads to the savings. So that's the argument for it.
What about doctors? Now, they're the ones that are out there on the front lines. You say polls indicate doctors prefer Medicare for All, but then I hear, isn't the AMA helping to fund efforts to oppose this? So sort that out for me.
Well, my organization that I'm working with is called Physicians for a National Health Program. Your listeners and viewers can look it up, pnhp.org. But that particular organization, when I first joined it, when I first got interested in this, we were just a little bit over 1,000 people. We're up to 22,000 physicians and other professionals that care about this that are part of our organization now. Meanwhile, the AMA has been shrinking. And even within the AMA, the student section of the AMA is pushing for further study and to look further into the notion of Medicare for All. Here's what's in it for doctors. You get your freedom back, right? Because you're not going to have to play Mother May I with all the insurance companies and all their different rules. You're not going to have to be caught up in dozens of contracts trying to figure out how you're going to get paid or if you won't get paid with all those different rules.
Will you have to meet any quotas?
Well, that'll be up to the doctor himself. Now, if we do fee for service, you'll still end up with the doctor having to decide how fast am I going to go. But the interesting thing about looking at what doctors are doing, you're going to have all the information. I'll know how many visits that Dr. Smith produced in a day. And if it's 100 visits in a day, I'm probably going to want to go over there and figure out how are you doing 100 quality visits in a day.
If they're quality visits,
Yeah. So from that perspective, I think that you would have a lot of information. You wouldn't need to be intrusive in terms of what you're doing. You could just compare doctors to others and see these outliers. You could go talk with them about what's going on.
Let me try this one. I bet you've heard this. I know I've heard it. Quote. Yeah, well, in Canada, you have to wait forever to get our procedure done. And if it's really big enough procedure, if it's serious enough, they come here anyway. We've all heard that. Is it true?
No.
Tell me.
People do not wait for emergencies in Canada. We've got lots of, actually I have a video on my phone of a Canadian physician who talks about how she practiced both places. She would never want to come back to the States. So recently the immigration of physicians, Canadian physicians, which were coming toward the U.S. for a decade or two ago, it's all reversed. Many physicians, Canadian physicians going back to Canada. Now, here's the waiting times that they have are often quite logical. And some of the waiting times that they had were actually related to not understanding how to do lines. You want to know about lines? Cedar Point can tell you about lines, right? So you want to know about lines. One of the things the Canadians found with heart services, for example, in Ontario, is that they just needed to leave holes in the line. So if somebody got sick and needed to be moved up, they didn't have to add a single cardiologist, didn't have to add a single open heart surgery.
Space for them.
They just made space so that if people got sick, they could jump up in the line.
What about, we're getting short on time, and I told you this is still scratching the surface of this deep subject, although we're touching on a lot of things here. What about drugs? Pharmaceutical houses are lining up against Medicare for All. Will our drugs be covered?
You know, absolutely. I mean, we have certain things that are essential to our
And will
healthcare.
pharma still have the funds it needs to continue to search for life-improving and life-extending prescription drugs?
They don't do that, Jerry. That's the NIH, okay? We almost all the new drugs that have come out in the last decade or two have been through U.S. taxpayer-sponsored research through NIH R01 grants. We're talking about the big-time researchers at our universities.
Big Pharma tells us they spend billions on research. That's what they tell us.
spend billions getting them to market. The actual invention of it is through us. So what we're doing is we're taking those drugs, we're turning them over to pharma, and then pharma, once they actually put them through the actual real-life testing, they're jacking the price up. And every place else, even the VA here in the country, right, is getting half off. So.
You say the forces against the single-payer system are lining up. They have amassed millions in the war chest. So, folks, game on. We've just started the discussion. That is time for us, but I want to thank you for stopping by, and I want you to come back and be at my table as we continue. And if I hear from the other side say, Jerry, you got to ask him this, you know I will do it.
I'll be head-to-head if you want it.
He's heard it all the time. My thanks, Dr. Johnathon Ross,
Thank you,
a big proponent of Medicare for all. When I come back, the guy who says, I'm the best football player nobody's ever heard of, and by the way, God told me to do something. What is that? We'll find out next.